JFK Assassination, a new look at the evidence, Part 2. Continuing where we left off with Part 1, I just want to recap. This photograph showing the evidence only portrays 2 empty cartridges and 1 unfired cartridge. This FBI report, dated November 23rd, 1963, only lists 2 empty cartridges found in the building and 1 unfired cartridge from the rifle. To me, this is a huge inconsistency. We have been told by Warren Commission apologists that 3 empty cartridges were found. In fact, many JFK researchers who do not believe the Warren Commission report have stipulated that 3 were found. Well, this document only lists 2. This photograph only shows 2. If they cannot show me a report from the FBI dated November 23, 1963 that portrays 3 empty cartridges, as well as a picture that portrays 3, I don't believe there were 3 found. The Warren Commission for 44 years has told us to trust them. Sorry, that's not going to happen. You have to back up your evidence. If you cannot show me with photographs and official documentation evidence to support your claim, then I'm not willing to take it on faith. I'm sick and tired of these Warren Commission apologists, such as this moron Gerald Posner, who wrote this ridiculous book, Case Closed. This guy swallows the entire Warren Commission report whole. There's not anything that he doesn't agree with about it. Okay, now that I've gotten that rant out of my system, I would just like to go off on a little side note here, pointing out in the FBI document, it mentions evidence obtained from Special Agent Vincent E. Drain of the Dallas Field Office of the FBI. In 1990, I lived and worked in Dallas, Texas, and I was employed at a very exclusive private club, and 2 members of that club were intimately associated with this case. One was one of the doctors, Dr. Paul Peters, who had treated Kennedy at Parkland Hospital on that fateful day. The other was this agent, Vince Drain, who flew this evidence to the Washington lab to be analyzed. I was fortunate enough to get to speak with him about the Kennedy case for probably only 5 minutes. He was actually a very friendly man. It was such a pleasure to meet him. He actually told me that he test fired the rifle found in the Texas School Book Depository and that it was, quote, fairly accurate, unquote. He didn't say it was a piece of crap, but he also didn't say it was a very accurate weapon. Now, I'm thinking in my mind, if you're going to assassinate the president, you're going to have a very accurate weapon that you have tested, you have sighted in, you've spent time at the range with. In Oswald, there's no record that he did any of these things. This next inconsistency, I want to point out this photograph. This is the very famous 8P photograph, the Altkins photograph, facing towards the Texas School Book Depository building as the presidential motorcade passes. Now, as you can see from this blow-up, President Kennedy has already been hit and is reacting to the bullet strike from the throat. I believe that to be an entrance wound. The doctors at Parkland also viewed it as an entrance wound. There are 2 things about this photograph I want to point out. One, there's a man in the doorway that very closely resembles Lee Harvey Oswald. We're going to touch on that in just a moment. Right now, I want to point out to you that the tree in between the limousine and the Texas School Book Depository blocks the view from the 6th floor window. In other words, even though Kennedy has already been hit, the view from the limousine to the sniper's nest is blocked by that tree. Now, how can that be? Now, he was shot earlier because he's already reacting. He was probably shot 1 to 1.5 seconds before. But still, at this point, the line of sight from the sniper's nest to Kennedy has been blocked by this tree. This is amazing to me that very few people have actually pointed this out. Next, take a look at this photograph taken from the vantage point of the sniper's nest looking down towards Elm Street. As you can see, the top of the tree is blocking the view. Also note the steep angle at which you would have to shoot, firing down upon the moving motorcade, even if you were lucky enough to be able to make that shot through a tree where you did not have a clear line of sight to the victim. It's just not plausible. I'm sorry, I don't believe that this was a shot that anyone could make, much less Oswald. Now, getting back to the previous point about the photograph of what appears to be Oswald in the Texas School Book Depository doorway, I would just like to point out that for years I thought this was Oswald. Now I have changed my mind, based in part on Robert Groden's book, The Killing of a President. In his book, Grodin asserts that he has done optical tests and determined this is not Oswald in that photograph. Now note this photograph of Oswald taken later after the assassination on the 22nd. This is a press conference. That bears a strong resemblance to the man in the doorway. Now, if this is not Oswald in the doorway, and I'm willing to stipulate that it is not, I just find it curious that two people that look this much alike working at a warehouse that probably has 24 employees, and on the most scrutinized day of their lives, the most photographed day of their lives, they just happen to be wearing similar clothing. Do you not find that curious? I sure do. This next inconsistency involves something that I've struggled with for years, trying to understand exactly what's going on. The alleged palm print of Oswald found on the murder weapon when it was in a disassembled state. This was according to the Warren Commission and the Dallas Police. But if you look at the evidence, you will see some very troublesome things about this allegation. In the initial FBI report, which I'm going to show you here in just a moment, it clearly states the FBI tests could find no latent prints of value on the rifle. Now look at this FBI document. It is dated November 23rd, 1963. It was done in the middle of the night, probably early morning hours of November 23rd, by a team of 3 FBI analysts. This was the most important case of their careers. I seriously doubt they're going to overlook anything. They're going to dot every I and cross every T. I guarantee you the pressure from their superiors was such that they're going to make sure they do everything strictly by the book. And I do not believe that they would have overlooked something as important as a print of the alleged murderer on the murder weapon. I don't buy that. Now take a look at this FBI report. It says clearly, no latent prints of any value were found on the inner parts of the rifle. There it is in black and white, folks, right there. No prints were found on the inner parts of the rifle. Inconsistency number 6 deals with something that I am willing to bet most of you have never seen before. I've only seen this next document published in one other book about the Kennedy assassination. It's probably on some websites, but again, because this document comes from the JFK assassination file by retired Dallas Police Chief Jesse Curry, which I obtained in 1976, and again have never seen it published but only one other place. I think a lot of people have overlooked this document, and I am certain this document would have been the cornerstone of Oswald's defense had he been afforded that opportunity. Unfortunately, he was robbed of his constitutional right to mount a defense against these charges, and because he was murdered by a delusional nutcase, that man has gone down in history as the lone gunman who murdered JFK, and I think wrongly so. Now, getting back to this document, this is in layman's term known as the paraffin test. Anytime someone is suspected of having fired a pistol or a rifle, they will be booked into the police department. And one of the first things they're going to get is this test. Hot paraffin wax will be poured over their hand, or in the case of a rifle shooting, on their face, and it will remove any chemical traces of gunpowder residue. It is then exposed to a chemical called diphenylbenzidine, which will react with burnt gunpowder, thus offering proof that that suspect has recently fired a gun. Now, if you notice in this particular document, it has 2 parts of Oswald's person were tested. 1, his face, and 2, his hand. The diphenylbenzidine reacted with the nitrates present on his hand. However, as you can see, it clearly shows no nitrates were found on item number 1, the paraffin test of Oswald's face. Now, the presence of nitrates does not necessarily mean that you fired a gun. You could strike a match and get nitrates on your hand. However, the lack of nitrates from someone who is accused of firing a rifle 3 times at the president, murdering him and gravely wounding the governor, he's going to have nitrates on his face. And the fact that Oswald did not have any, according to this test, shows he did not fire a rifle on the day in question. Simple as that.